This presentation, we're going to discuss some of the skills needed to facilitate presentations in online learning. And we'll go over some different skills and techniques I think that will help you going forward for your learners. I think you're going to enjoy this presentation and the ideas and suggestions that we suggest. So sit back and enjoy, and look forward to sharing some of these ideas and points with you as we move forward. The first things you'll want to do is to understand the capabilities of the different types of technology. You want to consider that when you're setting up an assignment, a way that you want to communicate some content to your students. If you want to use video capture software or PowerPoint presentation with VoiceOver, or another format with Keynote, or another program for the Mac side, and uploading videos to YouTube. If those are the types of things you want to do, if you want to do polling type questions through cell phone or through computer based, I really want to understand what technology can do, and can it be played back, like for example with the mobile devices and tablet computing, what sort of technologies are cross-platform, and those are the types of things that you'll want to go and spend your time learning and using, because those forms of technology can be accessed on any platform and makes it easier for your students. You'll see some of that as you go through the program, different applications that we will use and you will actually use and integrate as part of your assignments. I think this is a big piece to really understand and know the limitations as well as the capabilities of the technology. That'll really affect your presentations and communicating, because you don't want to spend a ton of time with a program that has a real steep learning curve, for example, like Final Cut Pro, for example. For most of us who are teaching and things like that, we really don't have time to learn an expensive, detailed, high learning curve type of program like that, but something maybe more like a Camtasia or iMovie or Adobe Captivate may be a little bit simpler to use, or even Jing Pro or Snagit. Those types of things can kind of get you bogged down if you get too far deep in the weeds on some of the technology. So you really want to carefully consider, network, talk with others, talk with your colleagues, professors, and those in the field that are using the technology that can really help point you in the right direction too, as well as the different emerging technologies that are coming on that you may want to consider using as well. You also want to place your online learners at ease. You introduce new technology to them. You can do this through a variety of learning activities, and you'll see in our courses that that's part of what this program is all about. It's really embedding the technology as part of in the curriculum, as part of the outcomes. So we'll even have that as part of an orientation for students, and that's a good way to do it as well. Even have a tutorial or an orientation that they can go through and practice some of the different technologies and kind of see how they go, some of the demonstrations and simulations that are out there, some tutorials and things like that that your learners can see and use. That's probably one of the biggest things that I hear back from students, was they were really nervous about the technology and using it, and once they got in and started using it, it wasn't as bad as they thought. This course, our program, is really the place where you want to begin to test and try things and pilot things, because it's a safe environment, and this is where you need to learn to begin using it and preparing presentations and the like through the different technologies. So think of these courses as a safe place, a safe incubator where you have the opportunity to play with the different technologies and see what it does, develop your presentations, your assignments and things like that, integrating these technologies. So just saying that as well can help to ease your learners' apprehensions about using technology and being in an online course such as this, that this is the purpose of the course, is that you get exposed to it and begin to use these different technologies. For your first-time learners, they should be orientated to the online learning and virtual classrooms we talked about earlier on the previous slide. For example, you would have them refer to a tutorial or a document or a guide sheet or something like that. Having a place where they can go to either see a simulation or a demonstration of how to use a certain tool, technology that you're integrating, or a step-by-step process, both of those can be very, very helpful for students to help them, once again, become at ease and understand these technologies they're going to be using, and helping them to understand how they can use those technologies. And these things are going to continue to evolve and change, and something new, some new emerging technology is going to come up. So this is something that we're always on the cutting edge of and needing to keep our skills honed in above. And a lot of the products as well will provide their own tutorials. So you may even be able to copy a link or something like that to share with your online student. But these can be very helpful. And like I said, the written and verbal directions, once again, could be part of an orientation program to the online learning environment. Few techniques a facilitator can use to compensate for the lack of a face-to-face interaction with their students. And with the technology becoming so much better with different video conferencing like Skype and Google Plus, Hangouts, FaceTime, a lot of your mobile devices have apps that you can do video conferencing with as well. GoToMeetings, another one. There's just so many out there that are available. But I think for an online course, especially, you may want to ask participants to post an electronic picture with an introduction. For example, we can use voice threads in some of our courses where students will go in and introduce themselves, and they'll be able to use their video camera that's already on their computer and their microphone and record a video introduction of themselves. So that can be very helpful to bridge that gap. You can also rehearse synchronous events and obtain feedback from a pilot program, so you could actually integrate your synchronous, like Adobe Connect, for example, which we have access to, or a Google Hangout, something like that you can use. So that can be helpful. Another technique would be to give extra preparation time when writing questions to gain interaction. So you want to be sure that the questions are asked appropriately to get the type of answers you want. So those type of questions can really help. The good open-ended discussion questions can help build a very good discussion forum where students can interact with one another and share different ideas, and that can be very helpful. Obviously, using students' names. If you're doing a live environment, call on the names. If they raise their, use their icon to raise the hand, or a button that they push that rings a bell or something like that, can be very helpful in getting the group together once in a while for a, not saying you do it every week, but maybe a few times. A synchronous environment with one of the video conferencing sites can be very helpful too. You can also do other kinds of things that are fun for students and put them in groups. For example, do group work together, presentations where they collaborate with one another, and then of course mix the groups up for a different assignment and a different course or the same course, and maybe you have separate assignments where you can kind of give students an opportunity to work together. Another thing as a facilitator or as an online instructor, which many of you will become, is even to record your own video messages and share those with your group, whether you use a voice thread or a YouTube video or Adobe Connect, and you send a link to your students and they can see that face to face. Your face and your visual to them can mean a lot as far as towards retention and staying in the course. Another good skill and technique to use for online learning is to use some of the tools that promote interaction. We discussed a little bit about that in the last slide, about putting students in groups is a great idea, working on presentations together, discussion forums and the like. But then also the synchronous capabilities. You could even use polling questions in a synchronous environment. Those things will promote interaction and see students giving their opinions and voicing. We're using the raise the hand tool where you allow students to interact, asking good open-ended questions. Make use of the whiteboard, like for example in Class Live Pro, which is a program for online synchronous working together, has a whiteboard. So does Adobe Connect. So your students can go in there and you can interact and allow them to work on a project together, or just concepts and writing pieces, putting things up like they would come up and write on a chalkboard or a whiteboard. They could actually give them permissions to write on the board. So if you're asking an open-ended question and you just need like one-word answers or something like that, they could give them opportunity to type those in, or using a chat board, a chat window within those synchronous programs, where it is very helpful and useful too. And then the students send them a link and then they can have a log of that chat. You can also do virtual tours with a lot of these synchronous tools, and do synchronous tours on the web, do virtual tours, use videos, YouTube videos or the like, to illustrate a point, and then come back and maybe discuss some of the points out of that apply to the content or the message that you're trying to get across in your lecture. Those things can be really helpful. And then at the end, you always maybe have a time where you can get some feedback from those who are part of that seminar or your session, and some things that they learn, and provide some feedback, whether you use a formal evaluation or just allow them to give you some feedback at the very end in the last 5 minutes or so. Maybe just even ask some open-ended questions about some things that they learned that they didn't know before the session started. Then of course you've got your asynchronous tools that can help promote interaction during online learning, and VoiceThread is something that we use quite a bit, and so you can see how that is really helpful, especially when students are using the audio or the keyboarding in. The video and audio is really helpful. Students really enjoy doing that rather than just the analog text all the time for discussions. So those things can be real helpful as well. And you can also do offline polling questions as well. So like even use a Google form and send out a link to your online learners with a Google form questionnaire that you could set up a polling question, and then that data would come into your Google Docs spreadsheet, and then later you could share that with the entire group through an email or through a forum within your online course. Lots of things and lots of great tools that are at our disposal that we can use in this exciting time of online course development and teaching and learning. We wrap this session up. One final thing to be a little bit concerned about is some of the pitfalls in online learning and some suggestions to overcome them. For example, being an online facilitator, online teacher, you come across maybe as being the expert all the time, and maybe, like I said on the last slide with the synchronous tools that you can use in your online meetings when you're asking open-ended questions from a philosophical standpoint, allowing people to have different opinions and to share them and to be able to defend their positions and why they feel a certain way about something that maybe it's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but allowing students, giving them opportunity to get to the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, analysis and synthesis and evaluation of their thoughts. Allow others to share their expertise, maybe others that have more experience than you in a certain area, maybe a content area that you're covering. Also, use other sources, written or internal experts that you may know of, maybe a colleague, or we're at a conference and you saw a paper that was presented and it was meaningful, or you've read some things in a lit review as you're working on a research manuscript or something for publication, and share that with your learners. Make their work part of the program. Try to integrate what they're doing back at their jobs. And for example, how could you integrate an assignment that could be meaningful for them for their place of employment? It would give them a real meaningful application. And then, of course, I obviously recognize contributions of different learners to the program and recognize their involvement and your appreciation for their input, and ask participants to share some of their experiences as well in a certain area that could be helpful. Another thing you really need to be careful of is controlling the airtime, because a lot of times we could get, just as in a face-to-face environment, you can get one person that comes in and really can be domineering. You don't want to shut that person down totally, because you need them to help get things going and started, but you want to include as many people as well. So, you thank them for their opinion and sharing some of their thoughts, but how about somebody else? Can somebody else share some thoughts? Use some of those types of techniques to be able to help all the learners become involved and not just a few. So I hope this has been helpful for you as we finish up this session. So we're at the end of this discussion, this presentation about some skills needed for online learning, and I hope you've been able to gain appreciation for a lot of really it is a skill, and the more you do it, the more experience you have teaching online, the better obviously you're going to become at it. Don't be too hard on yourself at the beginning. Obviously, take things in perspective and realize that we're all at different areas of the spectrum and learning, and you will continue to learn as even the technology continues to evolve.